One time, I went to the bar with one of my friends. I had just turned 21, so I hadn't been to many bars up to that point. My friend was drinking on the way to the bar, so he was already pretty drunk when we got there. When I sat at the bar, a cute girl came and talked to me and my friend. She said that her name was Candace, and I noticed she had really bright red hair. I assumed she had dyed it. It was pretty but unnatural. Anyways, this girl was flirting with me and my friend. She could tell my friend was already very drunk. To be honest, I played along like I was drunk already too, since it seemed to be working for my friend. I didn't know if she was just trying to get free drinks, so I told her that we didn't have much money. But she offered to buy us drinks. She kept buying us drinks, and I started to get confused as to who she liked between me and my friend. My friend went to the bathroom. Before he came back, he was kicked out by the bouncers because he was too drunk. Candace and I went outside with him. She kept telling him to go home with her. He was so out of it that he could barely answer her. I told her that he was too drunk and that I couldn't let him go anywhere. I didn't want him to wake up hungover in some random house with no car and no idea what had happened. But Candace kept pushing it, saying that she would take care of him, but I told her no because I had to stay with him. I was more sober than him and he was my responsibility. I told her the only way that he was going anywhere was if I tagged along. I assumed she thought I was just being jealous, but my friend could barely stand and had lost interest in Candace already at that point. So, she immediately started to flirt with me, and offered to get my friend a taxi to drive him home, and said that we could go to her place alone. At this point, I had a few drinks and I was pretty buzzed, so I agreed. We took my friend to a taxi and walked to her car. I slightly stumbled on the way to her car. "Wow, you're pretty drunk, huh?" she said, smiling as she held onto my arm. "Yeah," I said. I don't know why, but I just felt slightly shy and anxious. Everything was just happening too easy for me, so I felt uneasy. We got in her car and we drove down the street. "Want to stop at the liquor store and get something more to drink? I'll buy it so you don't have to worry about paying," she offered. I didn't want to drink any more than I already did. I was already buzzed and wanted to be able to carry myself throughout the rest of the night. Sometimes I made myself look stupid when I'm drunk, so I didn't want to ruin anything with Candace more than I already had, when I told her that my friend was already too drunk. I told her that I was already drunk enough, but she insisted. I didn't want to seem lame, so I told her to give me a pint of liquor with some apple juice to chase it. She went in the store and came out with a lot more than just a pint. I assumed that she had wanted to drink more also, so that's why she got a fifth instead of a pint. But on the car ride, we passed the bottle back and forth, but she only took tiny sips. I tried to take tiny sips, but she kept passing me the bottle and telling me to drink. I somehow had managed to drink all of my apple juice and to pretend to drink the bottle by spitting the liquor in the apple juice bottle. I tossed the apple juice bottle full of liquor out the window before she had seen it. I didn't want her to know I was acting drunker than I was, so she actually believed I was sloppy drunk when I was simply buzzed. I took a couple more sips of liquor and finished the bottle. Throughout the car ride, I called her the wrong name a couple of times to get a reaction out of her. She didn't react to it. She just kept letting me call her Carla without correcting me. For some reason, I thought she lied to me about her name initially. We drove up to her house. I pretended to trip and stumble into her front door. She helped me walk inside by holding me up. She opened her front door, which was unlocked. We walked in her house and she closed her front door and then locked it. I thought that was strange, but assumed she didn't want anyone walking in on us. I told her that I had used the bathroom. I walked into her bathroom, locked the door, and looked in the mirror. I just felt strange. I felt like something was off. I felt myself becoming more drunk from finishing the bottle earlier. I turned on the sink to make noise and made myself puke up the liquor that I drank. I flushed it and went to the sink and started drinking the tap water out of my hands to sober up. I just didn't want to be drunk, but I still wanted to hook up with Candace, so I wanted to pretend to be drunk. I turned the sink off and I could hear her talking to someone. "He's drunk as hell. He can barely stand up. You do it." Who was she talking to and to do what? I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room. The moment that I stepped into the living room, I saw her walking into another room. All I could see was the back of her head. That strange, very bright red hair going to another room. I didn't see her face or anything. I just saw her kind of walk fast into the room. The living room was pretty dark. "Hey, where are you going?" I slurred like I was drunk. She walked back into the dark living room and up to me. "Let's go in my room," she said. I looked at her bright red hair and then into her eyes. They were different. Her face was different. It was another girl with the same hair. And that's when I realized it. It was another girl with the same wig on. It was the wig the whole time. She had changed it with the girl from earlier for whatever reason. My heart felt like it had stopped. But I tried to look like I had no idea it was a different girl. I kind of smiled at her and told her I just needed to use the bathroom one more time and told her sorry I was so drunk. She said, "It's fine, just hurry up in here." I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I heard her whisper something to someone again. This time, I think, I heard a male voice whisper back. I honestly didn't concentrate on listening to exactly what she had said. Something sketchy was going on and I had to get out of that house. I opened the bathroom window and jumped straight out of it and ran faster than I have ever ran in my life. I didn't look behind myself or anything. I just ran through the backyard, jumped the fence and ran through someone else's backyard, hit a road and then ran down towards the main road. I kept running down the main road until I saw a CVS and I ran into it and stood straight at the front of the store in front of the camera. I called a taxi and then I went home. I tried to think back on what happened that night. What was she or they planning that night? Why did she tell me a fake name? Why was she trying to get my friend and I so drunk? I thought maybe a robbery, but she kept spending money on us. She kept buying us drinks and even paid for my friend's taxi cab. And mostly, why did she wear a wig that she gave to another girl to wear? Who was she talking to? What did it mean? And what was in that room that they tried to lure me into? The next day after this incident, I went back to the house with a couple of friends to see just what was going on. Nobody was there. No cars, no people, nothing. Just an empty house. I ended up finding out that that house was a summer rental, and whoever those people were, they had broken into that house and used it for only that night, and they never came back. As a kid, I lived in a pretty typical suburban neighborhood in a ranch-style house. My bedroom was at the front corner of the house, with a window that faced the street and a window that faced the house next door. I was 11 or 12 at the time, and I shared the room with my younger sister. We had bunk beds, and I liked to sleep on the bottom bunk. From the position of my bed, I could see through the window that looked out at the street. I woke up one night to a thud at my front window. I was immediately on edge. I was always a paranoid kid. Knowing full well that I wouldn't sleep, I laid there petrified. It seemed like hours, but what was likely a few minutes later, a man's face appeared through the crack in my curtain. I could see it so clearly in my mind, even to this day. I saw the shadow of his hands through my thin curtain cupped around his face, and what I'm assuming was his attempt to see in the window better, and his eyes, nose, and mouth were completely clear through the crack. I cried there for a few minutes, unable to move, while he shifted a few times trying to see more clearly into my bedroom. I got the courage to slip out of my bed as quickly and quietly as I could, and I ran into my parents' room to wake up my dad. At first, my father tried to attribute the noise to the large lilac bush at the corner of the house, of which the branches would occasionally tap on my window when it was breezy and the bush was overgrown. I cried and told him about the man. When he had woke up all the way and realized what I was saying, he leapt from bed and ran outside. The man was nowhere to be seen. My dad told me that it must have been a nightmare, that the window would be too tall for anyone to look in anyway, and he ushered me back to my room. I didn't sleep. The next morning, we realized a planter pot had been pulled over from the front porch to underneath my front window to be stood on. A piece of the concrete window frame was broken off, and we could clearly see the place where someone's forehead and nose had been in contact with the window. Luckily, nothing else ever came of this. Years ago, when I was still a teenager, my friend Justin and I would often go longboarding at night, as my friends and I were quite the night owls. We loved the freedom of almost never seeing another soul on the roads or the paths that we frequented. Even when using main roads, it would be very rare to see a car out so late in such a rural area, and you could see and hear them coming from very far away due to their headlights and the noise of the vehicle disrupting the peaceful silence of the night. We were really into it at the time, and we would often ride our boards for miles and miles, sometimes not arriving home until the sun was up. One particular night, we decided to ride a few miles away from our usual back roads to take one of our favorite hidden routes. It began with a narrow paved path that was the only piece of land separating two sides of a long lake. It would often sink under due to the rain, and we wanted to seize the opportunity to use it before it rained and went underwater again. It was roughly 2 miles long and was extremely relaxing to ride through due to the scenery. After making it to the end of the lake, we decided to continue moving and turn into a very close path that leads directly into a densely wooded wilderness preservation. As we came up to the first hill, we looked down at the bottom into the blackness. We both noticed what appeared to be a tiny moving ball of dim light down there. It moved so strangely, and it was extremely difficult to make out what it was. Rather than shine our flashlight down, we curiously watched it for a few moments, whispering to each other about what it could possibly be. All at once, that small light turned into multiple blinding lights and extremely loud revving sounds, overwhelming our senses that had become accustomed to the dark and silence. Acting purely on fear, we instantly turned around and ran as fast as we could, hearing yelling and revving gaining behind us. By sheer luck, we had managed to run off path into a very dark, very overgrown hole in the side of a hill overlooking where we had just come from. We decided to hide in the natural dugout of this hill, hoping the plants and darkness would be enough to protect us from whatever was happening out there. We watched our pursuers right up to where we had originally been standing. There were 4 men, 2 on 4-wheelers and 2 on full-sized motorcycles. They were yelling at each other about something, but we couldn't make out what they were saying due to the distance that we had covered. We felt safe enough to whisper very softly to each other and speculated what these people could be. Our first thought was that they might be park rangers of some kind, although we had never seen one here in the many times that we had been through. And honestly, we doubted that this county had the budget or even the desire to have anyone patrol the deep woods at night. And besides that, these men were on vehicles entirely inappropriate for the paved bike trails, and they were very angry about something. They called out to us for a while, yelling things like, "We know you're out there," and "We can see you, come on out." We stayed silent, deciding to call their bluff instead of running. Eventually, we clearly heard one of the men yell, "Find them now," and they smashed a bottle. That had erased any hope we had that these were just park rangers. We watched them split up, each of them going a different way down the series of paths on their vehicles, including the path that we came from. It took us what felt like ages to even move. We were frozen in terror inside that dugout, watching the lights from the vehicles travel through the woods and paths, one of them already coming full circle and passing the point that he had started from. I thought about calling for help, but I was too afraid to open my phone in fear that even the smallest amount of light would give away our location. After waiting for the lights of the vehicles to reach their farthest distance yet, we finally summoned the nerve to get up and try to run somewhere far enough from these people to safely make a call. We ran as hard and fast as we could through the woods. Since their headlights gave away their location on these paths, we would hide again whenever we felt they were getting too close. Our available hiding spots were getting progressively worse as the woods became less dense, and the fear that I felt waiting for one of them to drive past us, while basically only being covered in leaves and plants, may still be unmatched to this day. Finally, we emerged from the woods onto the intersection of two main roads, far from where we had started. I ducked down into the ditch to call for help. While I opened my phone, I noticed that I had recent missed calls from one of our other friends, Connor, who we were supposed to meet up with after our longboard excursion. I called him and frantically asked where he was. Luck was with us again. He hadn't given up on our plans despite us ignoring him, and he was only a few miles away, already heading in our direction. I gave him the names of the two streets that we were near the corner of, and explained that we needed to be picked up right away. He agreed to speed over to us while Justin and I waited in hiding. Thankfully, Connor arrived before any of those men did. We bolted into the backseat of his car, yelling for him to get out of there, and he took off. Relief doesn't begin to describe what I felt being safely driven home after everything I had just experienced. After explaining everything that had happened to Connor, we ended up just moving on with our night and decided not to call the police. We figured they would be gone by the time any officer made it out there, and that we would only be putting ourselves at risk by admitting to breaking the law by taking those paths so late at night. I still have no idea what happened or who those people were. I've been told all kinds of theories from friends and family that have heard the story. Some think we walked right up to a huge drug deal. Justin and I later admitted to each other that when the revving had started and we couldn't see, our minds both went straight to chainsaw-wielding horror movie serial killer. So I suppose it could have been much worse. Frustratingly enough, whatever those men thought we saw that made them want to catch us so badly, we never actually saw. We'll never really know, I suppose. Before I begin, I should state this was a few years ago and I'm a tiny woman. Back at this time, I looked like a teenager, so I've always been mindful that I seem an easier target or easier to fool. I had seen a job interview for a small business looking for a secretary. No experience needed, as they would provide on-the-job training, and as that's the kind of thing I was looking for, I applied. I heard back quickly and I was invited for an interview. When I arrived, I was excited. It was a bit of a drive from my home, but it was in a beautiful old building, on the 3rd floor with a modern layout inside, though you could tell it was very new, as it was bare bones and very little had been unpacked. Still though, if you have to work somewhere, it might as well be in a nice building, right? Anyway, the interview seemed normal. I only encountered female members of staff, and they were all warm and lovely. The woman interviewing me was amazing and even sat talking to me for a while after getting to know me. When I got home, I wasn't in the door long before I got a phone call from them. I had nailed the interview. Awesome, I thought, and I was offered the job. I was about to accept when I was told on the phone, "Okay, you'll come in tomorrow and we'll have the van drive you to where you'll be working." And I was like, what? Confused at what they meant. They then told me that I would be meeting with customers on their behalf and talking, selling stuff. I was not comfortable with this, as it wasn't what I was interviewed for, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had had a second position they thought I would fit in better with. It wouldn't be that weird as a new company, and while it wasn't what I was comfortable with, I should hear them out. So I asked more questions and the woman on the other end of the line was getting more snippy and tense. Gone was the nice friendly woman from earlier, and she would not reveal where I would be going or who I would be meeting. By this point, plenty of red flags were going off, so I declined the offer. For anyone curious about what happened after, I reported this as it seemed very dodgy. But when they were checked in on, the floor was no longer occupied by them. They had apparently just rented it for a week and they were gone. I just want to say this all happened when I was 18, and I was young, innocent, and naive. Now that I'm in my mid-20s, I would never let this happen again. It was my freshman year of college, and as could one imagine, I was excited to be on my own for once in my life. So excited to be on my own that I decided I was going to take summer classes on campus. That way, I wouldn't have to worry about coming in when the big crowd of freshmen came, and I would already know where everything was. Plus, it meant that I could get away from my parents faster. But mainly, all they could think about was boys. You see, I had never dated anyone through high school, so I thought I would find my true love at college. Because of course, that's what all the movies told me anyways. About 2 weeks go by and me and one of my roommates, I had 4, were hanging out in the lounge area showing out pictures from Instagram of our friends, family, etc. Well, my roommate, I'll call her Tracy, showed me a picture of her and these 2 guys. One of the guys was her boyfriend, and the other was Tracy's boyfriend's best friend. I'll call him Sean. Now, Sean was very attractive and I told Tracy that he was hot. And she told me that he went to the tech college near us and he was single. Now, a day or 2 goes by after this and she tells me that she told Sean that I was interested in him, and he wanted to know if he could follow me on Instagram so we could DM. At the time, I trusted Tracy because she seemed like a cool and chill girl, so I excitedly told her yes. I wish I never told her yes. I talked to Sean for about a week before I was comfortable enough to give him my phone number. At first, he seemed super sweet. He would always send me a text message in the mornings, telling me to have a good day at class and that he couldn't wait to FaceTime me that night. And we would FaceTime every night. At first, I loved it because I never had a boy give me so much attention. And like I said before, I had never dated anyone, so I was over the moon that he was even interested enough in me to talk to me. But it started to get annoying. He would text me almost every second of the day and try to FaceTime me at least 4 times. When I wouldn't respond to him, he would ask if I was okay. Why wasn't I answering him? If I was seeing another guy. If I was seeing another guy, it would make him really mad if I was. I, of course, once seeing the messages, would try to reassure him that I was okay and that I wasn't seeing anyone. Like I said in the beginning, I was young and naive, so I didn't see it as a red flag. And things kept going downhill from there. It came to a point where he started asking for pictures of me, either just selfies or pictures of me in the mirror. I wouldn't send them though because I wasn't comfortable, and he would brush it off saying that was fine and I could send him pictures of myself to him whenever I was ready. One day, I was in class for a long time because it was a lab, and it started at 7 p.m. and wouldn't end until 10 p.m. that night. For those of you who don't know, labs in college can last from 2 to 4 hours, and mine just happened to be 3 hours that night. Once class had ended, I headed up to my dorm and took out my phone. I clicked the button on the side, lighting up the screen. It had 380 unread text messages, 10 missed calls, and 3 voicemails from Sean. Before I could even react or even read all the messages, my phone started to ring. Instead of being Sean, it was my dad. He called me to make sure that I was alright, because he had gotten an alert from the phone company that I had gotten all of those messages. I was still on his phone plan at the time. I don't know why, but I lied to him and laughed it off, saying that I was just in a group chat with a bunch of girls from school. Once I got off the phone with my dad, I quickly went to look at the messages that I had gotten. Most of them were demanding why I wasn't answering him, and he would come and find me if I didn't answer him. The voicemails were crude and mostly of him saying how he was going to find me and when he did, he was going to punish me for not answering him. After this, I just completely blocked him on everything I could think of, completely freaked out about the whole thing. About a week goes by and I start to slowly forget about the incident, trying not to think too much about it. At least that's what I was trying to do. That whole week, I felt like someone was watching me, but I brushed it off as me being paranoid. At the end of the week, my roommate Tracy, who I had been avoiding, comes up to me shouting at me saying how I broke Sean's heart, and he had called her crying saying that he didn't understand why I stopped talking to him. I couldn't even get a word out because of how fast she was talking. She finally called me really self-centered and walked away. I went to class right after that, not realizing I forgot to lock my dorm room. You see, I lived with 4 girls and each girl had their own room, which would lock from the outside with a key. Well, when I came back from class, I noticed my door was cracked open slightly. My heart dropped into my stomach. I hesitated going in. My hands were shaking terribly, but I finally got the nerve to push it open. Nothing. There was nothing out of place, it seemed. Even though there was nothing out of place, I could have sworn I closed the door before leaving for class. Though I don't remember if I had locked it or not, I know for sure I had closed the door. So I asked my roommates, including Tracy, if anyone had gone into my room today, and they all denied it, even Tracy. But I just knew, in my heart, someone had been in there. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't. So one weekend when I knew that all my roommates were going to be out of town, I had switched dorm buildings and roomed with a girl I had gotten to be close friends with. After I moved in with her, I told her about all that had happened, and she said that she would walk with me to all my classes. Thankfully, we had most of our classes together anyway, except the night lab that I had. But she would still walk with me to my lab, and wait until my lab was done to walk with me back to the dorm. One night though, she had gone out of town to see her parents or something. I was walking back from my lab and it had gone really late that night again. I heard someone walking behind me, but I didn't pay any mind to it since class was just let out. But as I was walking, I could hear these steps getting closer. So I started to pick up my walking speed. At this point, I could tell someone was following me and I was too afraid to look back. As the footsteps increased and got faster, I started running as fast as I could. Now let me tell you, I'm not athletic by any means. Somehow though, adrenaline probably. I was able to sprint to my dorm building hearing someone still running behind me. And I thankfully already had my keycard out to get into the building. And I swiped it on the door and I slammed it behind me. Looking up from slamming the door, I see someone who's probably about 10 feet away from it staring at me. Even though the person's hoodie was up, I couldn't see their face, I could just tell that they were looking at me. But I knew it was Sean. Not wasting any more time, I go to the RA that was up that night, bawling, telling him what had just happened. He called the police and I told them everything that happened. But they basically said they couldn't do anything since I didn't even see his face, even if I thought it was Sean. And maybe I was just paranoid since it was nighttime and I was walking by myself. After all this, I called my friend and told her what had happened, and she never went out of town again if I had my late night classes. I eventually decided that college wasn't for me and I dropped out. I moved back to my home state and went to cosmetology school and became a hairdresser. I still haven't dated anyone yet though. Maybe it's the fear of something like that happening again. I'll never know. I do know that I'm super careful with who I talk to now, and who I give my social media and phone number to. I'm still scared to go to places by myself, even though it's been years and I'm states away. Even so, I don't know. Be prepared to listen to things that are not my finest moments. When I was a freshman in high school, I was dealing with a lot of things and it ultimately caused poor life decisions. So, I started high school when I was young, barely 13 years old. I'm a female, now a junior. I didn't think anything about this guy since I wasn't focused on people. I didn't really care about anyone except my 2 friends that I had in the classes that I had with him. He was 17 at the time, and yes, in those classes, the grade levels were mixed. Nothing ever struck me as odd about him, since I rarely paid attention to him. Until one day in biology, I looked up from my paper and saw him taking pictures of me. I was creeped out, but didn't say anything in case I was wrong. And then days later, he found my Instagram and kept texting me, which I obviously would never respond to. And if I had to, I would be very dry and just leave him on read. And then one day in the middle of class, I got a text from a random number saying, "Hey," various emojis and heart ones too. And I immediately knew it was him, since earlier he was asking for my number, which I declined to give to him. I immediately went to the 2 friends in that class to yell at them for telling him, in which they replied, "We never gave it to him." They even showed me their phones and let me go through them and their messages with him, and no number of mine was ever mentioned, despite his numerous text messages asking them for it. I never answered him and desperately tried to avoid him, until one day on Instagram, I got a message from him saying, "You're so pretty," to which I replied that I wasn't pretty, and then he spammed me with pictures that he had taken of me. That wasn't even the creepiest part. There were like 50 plus pictures of me, ranging from classes around the school campus, and even outside of school, like near the bus stop or waiting for a friend and the quad to go somewhere. There was even some of me playing soccer with my friends on the football field. It's used for soccer too, since the soccer field gets flooded easily and constantly is getting fixed to look pretty. Obviously, I left him on red and blocked him and avoided him even more, to the point that I started skipping classes. And when I did go, I told the teacher what had happened, while I was shaking, and she would let me go to the dean of the school where I showed them everything, and even gave them the number that I got the message from. It's been 2 years and I'm a junior now. I stayed in the school since they have connections to a hospital that I want to volunteer in, and because I have great friends there. And he's made new accounts and everything. Instagram, Snapchat, and probably got a new number. And he's been trying to follow me and message me for weeks now. I keep blocking him, but new accounts are created. I'm honestly glad to quarantine, since I would probably be nervous to go to class or even school. It's also worth mentioning that it's still not known how he got my number, as the only 2 people who had it never gave it to him. And I'm 100% sure that he was following me around school, even after I had told the dean. So, I am now 16. I turned 16 a few days ago, and recently, I've been playing games on Roblox with my best friend, like Murder Mystery 2, Arsenal, etc. And one of the games I play on my own is Adopt Me, because I like all the pets they have. I am writing this minutes after it had happened. I was playing Adopt Me after my classes, since we have short periods for school on Mondays, so it was like 11:52ish, and now it's 12:07. There was this player who had a variation of my stalker's name with random numbers after it, and I stupidly thought nothing of it. Instead I thought, oh, it's a pretty common name, which it is. But I couldn't shake off this feeling, and then that person kept following me. And again, I was stupid and thought, they probably want to trade since I have an ultra rare pet. So I stopped driving, but that trade invitation never came. So me being me, I left and went to the campsite since my pet wanted to go there. Everything was fine until I was going back to my home in the game. Until that user put, "Hey, my name." And I didn't think anything was wrong until I did a double take and realized that my name isn't on my Roblox account. And on my Roblox account, I only have 3 friends. And all 3 of them either call me by my alias that I made for my books or future podcasts, or by my Roblox name whenever we play. I didn't respond to the message and instead just acted like I didn't see it, while the other players were asking the user, "Who's my name?" The player then kept on following me around until I left the game. and even then he sent me a friend request which I denied and immediately blocked. That wasn't the only thing he had done since my last update on the story. He found out about this guy that I'm talking to somehow. The guy isn't from California, and he told one of his friends. I say friends with quotations because he has yelled at that friend for talking to me, or even being near me before. And that friend happens to be a very close friend of mine. And that friend told me what happened, and how he freaked out but couldn't do anything, due to the guy not being in California, and seeing that he was scary looking to my stalker. The guy is a huge softie, so it made me laugh knowing that. After I was told that he had somehow been stalking my followers and following, I blocked people that would know him, and possibly let him use their account to look at mine. I updated my brother, legal guardian, and my friends that knew about him, so they would know, and even told the guy in case my stalker had the idea to message him and tell him a complete lie. As previously, the stalker had messaged a close friend of mine and told him that we were dating, me and my stalker, in an attempt to get my friend to stop talking to me. He even told that same friend that he was going to marry me and that we were going to have 2 kids, which is a huge lie, because 1, I don't want kids, and if I ever do, I'll adopt, and 2, if I get married, it'll most likely be to the guy that I'm talking to right now, or to a woman. Luckily, nobody believed him except his friends who were saying that it would happen one day, and he'd just keep trying to be with me. I overheard once and was disgusted and told 2 of my friends, D and B, about it, to which they got mad and refused to let him near me whenever he tried to talk to me. Even though now we're not in those classes, D and B are still in classes with my stalker. We're still close, and they tell me whenever they overhear my stalker's friends giving him ideas. In my last update, I left out a piece of information due to me not having the full story, until my friend B told me the rest that I needed after it was posted, and I didn't want to assume anything or give possibly false information. Rewinding to freshman year, on Valentine's Day, I found a huge stuffed bear in my math class and it was on my seat, so I thought somebody had left it there. And when the teacher came into the class, I told him that someone left a huge stuffed bear behind, to which my teacher responded, "That wasn't there in my previous class. Somebody probably left it there for you. Maybe a secret admirer." Me and my math teacher have a father and daughter bond, so we play around like that. We ended up looking into the packaging because our curiosity got the best in us, and it had a letter. I still vibrantly remember it because it creeped me out so much. It read, "Dear my name, it's Valentine's Day and I wanted to give you something for today. I like everything about you, your smile, your eyes, and your body. You're perfect. I love you." I stayed in for a bit during lunch and gave my math teacher the note, which got him creeped out too. We ended up throwing away the note, and I took the bear but met up with a friend, S, for the rest of lunch. She asked who gave me the stuffed bear and said that it was nice. I ended up telling her what had happened with the note and how I found it, and then I gave the stuffed bear to her so she could keep it. You all might ask, why did I give her the bear? Well, I have 3 reasons for that. 1, she has panic attacks and snuggling up to something when she has them helps her go through them, so I gave her a giant stuffed bear. 2, I don't like over-the-top things, and 3, I already had a lot of stuffed animals due to my brother getting me them since I was a baby. My friend S still has the bear, and it has helped her a lot, so I don't regret giving it away or even receiving it from my stalker, which was not known then, because it had helped someone out with a problem. Fast forward to when I found out the stuffed bear was from my stalker. My friend B had messaged me to tell me about my stalker finding out the guy that I'm talking to, and before we had ended our conversation, he asked if he could call me, which I said yes to. During the call, he told me about how he's in this group chat for this class on Instagram, and how they're all friends in that class, and that they were sharing things about their previous boyfriends or girlfriends for some reason, which my friend B and my other friend D were not a part of. Instead, they just looked at the messages. My stalker claimed that I dated him, and then said that I didn't want anyone to know but that we did date. We never did and never will. My stalker then continued on to say in the group chat that the giant stuffed bear that was on my seat in Algebra 1 was from him. And then he got so mad at me for giving it to a friend, so he broke up with me. I wasn't even shocked that he made up a story of us dating. And when I told my best friend, G, we laughed for a bit, and then decided to contact a lawyer and see if the restraining order could be put, and if the police could be involved. Sadly, I got the news that since he had not been near me since I had switched classes, and I'm no longer in classes with him, that I cannot get a restraining order since online harassment and stalking isn't bad enough. Yet since they've only been friend requests and hello, my name, which meant that I couldn't even go to the police due to it being online and not dangerous. Sorry if this was a bit too long. I would have shortened it, but it would mean more parts and I didn't want to annoy anyone trying to find the parts. Also, if anyone is going through this or something similar, tell someone, because at first I didn't say anything because I thought it wasn't going to get bad, but it did, and it is still getting worse. So, at the time, I was a 16-year-old female working at McDonald's. Now, at the McDonald's that I worked at, when you are on headset, basically where you answer people at the drive-thru, you are normally required to be at the first window and also take the payment. My job position was a customer care manager at the time, so my job was meant to be on front desk, but 99% of the time, they required me behind the tills. So, I was having a normal day, working a long shift but having a normal working day. I happened to be on headset in the first window that day. Anyway, my headset buzzes, letting me know that there is someone at my drive-thru lane. I go through to the first window to answer my customer, and this is how the conversation ensued. Hello, welcome to McDonald's. What can I get you? Oh wow, you've got a beautiful voice. His voice was very grunty and husky sounding, not off-putting. We have all sorts of customers come through McDonald's every day, so nothing gave me the creeps at this point, but his voice was very recognizable. Well, thank you, sir. How very flattering. What can I get you? I haven't decided yet. Can I just come around to the first window to decide? I want to see who I'm talking to. No, we weren't very busy, and at this point, the creeper hadn't actually creeped me out. I mean, all he had done was pay me a compliment, and we quite often had people complain that they liked the face-to-face contact. So, it definitely was not unusual to get a request like this. Yeah, sir, that's fine. Wow, you are just as beautiful as you sound. Thank you, sir. Have you decided what you're having? Are you an option? I laughed this off. It was my first job, and I wasn't the rude kind of person when someone is paying me a compliment. I must also point out that this man must have been in his 60s. I remember he had one lazy eye that looked to the left, painfully awful teeth, and patchy dark brown hair. At this point, I was a little bit uncomfortable, but was still more than willing to take his order. I'll have a cheeseburger. Okay, sir, that's 99 cents. Are you paying cash or card? Without answering my question, he started asking where I'm from, and how old I was, and so on. But it wasn't until his last few questions that I got super weirded out. What time do you finish work? 7:30, why? I didn't finish at 7:30, but 7:30 was the first number to come into my head when I blurted it out. I finished at 8 and would probably do some overtime too, but I wasn't about to let him know that. I can meet you if you want. I can pick you up outside and we can go somewhere. All the while that he's saying this, he has this horrendous grin on his face and he keeps winking at me. I'm really sorry, sir, but I'm not allowed to meet customers outside of work, as it's against our employee policy. This was utter BS, but I needed him to leave me alone. He carries on and being insistent, but not getting the picture. I cut the conversation short. Anyway, sir, sorry to be rude, but can I have the 99 cents for your cheeseburger? Yes, sorry. See you at 6:30. And off he drove to the next window. I was gobsmacked. I had already said I wasn't going to see him. I was a little bit shocked, but was not going to go over there and give him the satisfaction of talking to me again. My coworker came to me and said, that guy had a major crush on you and wanted your number, but I didn't give it to him. He's old enough to be your dad. Anyway, I explained exactly what had happened and how uncomfortable it had made me. 7:30 came and my coworker is spooked. The creeper is waiting in the car park for me, just like he said he would. He is sat halfway down the car park, and you can see him just staring in. Our car park wasn't very big. It only had 4 rows of parking spaces, so he wasn't that far away, and he would have clocked me the minute I walked out the door. At this point, I'm freaking out, and head to the back of the store where hopefully he can't see me. I had to stay at the back of the store for 40 minutes before we knew it was safe to come out. Fast forward a week and Creeper is back on a drive-thru. And guess who was back on the headset and at window 1? Me. I heard his voice and I recognized it straight away. I was hoping I would hear your voice again. Why didn't you meet me the other day? Just 1 second, sir. I'll be with you in a second. I immediately handed my headset to my manager and gave him a quick briefing of the situation. He gladly took the headset and dealt with the customer from start to finish. When my manager came back to let me know that he had gone, he said that the creeper had been asking for my name, my address, and my surname. My manager said he was the most creepiest guy he had ever met, and I was never to have anything to do with him again. If he came to work while I was there, afterwards my manager would have had me head to the back room while he had dealt with the creep. He still always asked about me, every time. So, my second encounter with a creep starts like this. Again, I'm a 16-year-old female working as a customer care manager on front of house for McDonald's. Now, where I am from, where you are front of house, you are required to wear a light strip top, a yellow neck scarf, and a pencil skirt just below the knee which has a small slit up the back. I always button my shirt right up to the top, so I always looked very modest, and I would never say a McDonald's uniform is attractive. Anyway, when I worked at McDonald's, I always put my all into everything I did. So, I knew tills, drive-thru, drinks, serving, etc. I have also always been someone that will happily have a conversation with someone to make their experience enjoyable and hopefully make them want to come back. I was working on tills when creeper number 2 came through the door. He was a tall, blonde bodybuilder, at least 50 though. He came to the till and ordered. Didn't look very happy, so I asked the obvious questions. How's your day, etc. He made small talk and we got chatting about both of our days. After that, he tells me, "It's nice to see someone smile around here. Everyone else is grumpy." It's a nice enough compliment, and I was used to it. He was right. Not many people here enjoyed their job. He starts coming in once a week, on a Wednesday morning. Each morning he would come in, we would have a chat. If I was on the floor, front of house, we would sit and chat at a table and my managers were fine with this, as they knew it made each customer's experience unique. We got to know each other's names. His name was Michael. I started college on a Wednesday and Thursday and worked at McDonald's part-time, so my shifts would change. I worked Mondays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays instead of Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and sometimes extra days if they needed me. Michael started coming into McDonald's every day to find when I was working. The first red flag, but I figured he was just lonely and he needed someone to talk to. Anyway, he worked out my shift pattern and came in on Tuesdays and said, after asking me why I wasn't in on Wednesdays because he missed our chats. He would do this thing where he would let someone else go in front of him, if it meant that he could come to my tail instead. He would wait till one side to get served by me. It was odd, but I didn't think much of it. Just thought that he was a man that liked to be served by someone with a smile and had taken a liking to me. Again, we chatted when he came in, and this is where it got a bit more weird. We were sat down talking and he decided to really open up to me. He told me how him and his wife were going through a messy divorce. He started going into details of why. He had punched his son, and now this guy was big. It looked like he was a bodybuilder. I can't remember exactly what had happened, but he had ended up smacking his wife too, I think. And here, he was telling me about it. I'm no counselor after all. After proceeding to tell me how big his house was, probably to try and grip my attention, he started telling me how he was living in the basement of the house that he owned and it wasn't fair. I'm going to hit her again if this carries on. Apparently, the wife and son wanted him out, and they were going to have it and not pay him for it, blah blah blah. And he wasn't letting that happen. His son won't talk to him, blah blah blah. He started asking me for advice, a 16-year-old girl. I didn't really know what to say, so I just sort of said, everything happens for a reason, I suppose. And as I went to get up, he asked me to sit back down. Now, I'd already been sat for near half an hour, and I know I said my managers don't mind, but that's pushing it a little bit. So I told him that I really had to go. He carried on, trying to get me to sit back down, but let me go in the end. Now, this may seem totally unrelated, but trust me, it will make sense later on. In McDonald's, you have these sauce pumps, right? Well, they are connected to a big bag of sauce which has a popper on the top of it. You basically pop the tube into the popper on the bag. But Christ, this thing is fiddly. It can take me about 10 minutes to just get it connected. And then put the heavy bag in the holder on the side is another 5 minutes. It's a total nightmare. Well, right, back to the story. The sauce had run out and I had to fiddle about getting it in. Where the sauce dispenser is, it's right opposite from where Michael always sits. I could feel eyes burning into my back as I did this, and anytime I would turn around, he would be looking at me and just smile. It made me feel a fair bit uncomfortable, but hey ho, it's my job and you deal with this stuff all the time. Trust me, he is not the first person I've had perving at my bum. He came back a few more times, and each time I felt more and more uneasy. He started being a bit more personal, telling me he thought I was a pretty young girl and that we should meet up for coffee at some point, and I politely declined. Michael then said this, "Can I ask you something personal?" It depends what it is. I can't promise that I'll answer." "Are you a virgin?" "I'm not answering that." "What size are your boobs?" "I have a boyfriend and I'm not comfortable answering these questions." "Do you love your boyfriend? Would you leave your boyfriend for me?" Trying to scare him. "My boyfriend is behind the counter and I don't think he'll be very happy with you asking me questions like that." "Just make sure he treats you right. You are a lovely girl. Anyway, I won't be coming back here for a while, so can I have your number?" I don't think my boyfriend will be happy about that either. After that, I go to the back room to calm myself as this was very unnerving for me. He was an older guy, being very strange and asking super inappropriate questions of me. He knew my age as I had told him previously. The day continued. He had left and I continued and went home. When I woke up the next morning, I had a message on WhatsApp, a message on Facebook and a friend request on there and an Instagram follow. It was Michael. I don't know how he had found all my personal accounts just through my first name. The only way that I can think of him finding it out is by asking a colleague what my surname is and getting my number off one of them. Maybe he was friendly with one of the other workers and got my number from them, I don't know. He had messaged me saying how he needed to see more of my pictures. My Facebook and Instagram are set to private, but he saw the main pictures for them and my WhatsApp photo. He had sent another message about how he loved looking at my butt when I was bent over crawling on the floor to fix the sauce bags. I don't know if my split in my skirt was revealing, but I don't think it was. Saying all the things he would love to do to me. At that point, I noped out and blocked him on everything. I still get messages, not sexual though, from other accounts that he has made, wishing me a Merry Christmas and so on, even though he should have gotten the gist of me not wanting to talk to him. Luckily for me, I moved away a week or so after that happened, so I never saw Michael again. Hey everyone, this happened a few years ago, so the details may be fuzzy. For some background, I drive half an hour to the next town over for a summer community theater group. Practices occasionally run a little bit long, and my friends and I like to hang out at McDonald's when the practices run late, because by that time, most of us are really hungry. So, story time. It was a clear summer night. If I recall, it was about 10 or 10:30. Curfew in my hometown was 11 that night, and since I was only 17, I had to get home in good time. The cops are usually pretty chill since I live in a small town, but I didn't want to risk it. At that point, most of my friends were already leaving, but my friend Emma was still waiting on a bacon cheeseburger. I had to use the restroom, so I told her that I would wait with her. No young woman really needs to be out alone late at night in a relatively dark parking lot after all. I went to the restroom, and when I came out, Emma was gone. Oof. I called her boyfriend, Steven. Hello? Hi, is Emma with you? Yeah, she's going home with me. Okay, and Peter, a friend who can't drive, he's with you too. Yeah. We continue to talk as I walk out into the parking lot. I hear a lot of yelling to my left and see that two younger men in a really beat up old red Chevy are screaming at the drive-thru microphone box. It's almost 10:30, so the drive-thru worker is probably helping to shut down the rest of the restaurant. They notice me staring and they wave. I wave back. Nothing weird yet, just a standard protocol for random strangers. Oof again. I walk across the parking lot towards my car, taking a second to notice the irony of not wanting Emma to walk across the dark parking lot. Meanwhile, here I am, a young woman walking alone across that dark parking lot. Triple oof. I climb in my car and get ready to go. I'm still on the phone with Steven at this point. Just as I start my car, the old red Chevy pulls up, right next to my Jeep. The mirrors could have bumped, they were so close on my driver's side. They wave, looking just a little bit lower than my eyes or even my entire face for that matter. I wave again, this time making it seem very clear by the look of my face that I'm not interested in escalating the situation any further. At this point, I had been taking martial arts for a few years now, so I knew I could defend myself if necessary. But it's better to entirely avoid situations where you may have to use martial arts anyway. Steven notices that my tone of voice has changed. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, there are these two creepy dudes in an old red Chevy parked right next to me. I may have to call you back. Big mistake. Oh, do you want me to come back and scare them off? No, I think I'll be fine. No reason to drag you back into town over this. Another mistake. Well, okay, but if you don't text me once you get home, I'm calling the cops. That sounds great, thanks. We hang up and the two creeps are still staring at my boobs. They really aren't that big, but I was wearing a tank top, so that probably didn't help me. They wave a third time. I don't bother with being polite this time. I reach over and lock the doors, and then look them in the eyes to tell them that I'm onto them. And then they start to get out of the truck. Nope, nope, nope. I throw it into reverse and get the heck out of Dodge. I hope that I ran over somebody's foot. I really do. I look back over my shoulder to see if they're following me, but they're back at the drive-thru yelling, trying to get the poor workers' attention. It was as if they had never left. I raced home, texted Steven to let him know that I was home, and I called it a day. Luckily, nothing came after that, and I never saw the two again. But man, I am always on the lookout for some beat-up old red Chevy. I'm 5'3", 115 pounds, so I guess I'm pretty small. That's my reasoning for being very submissive over all of this. This is a lengthy story, so I'm just going to skim, and I'm not the best at telling the story, so prepare yourself. When I started working at this fast food chain, I was 16. It was my first job, and I was excited to finally take my first steps into adulthood. This coworker of mine was training me. For privacy purposes, I'll call him Frank. Frank at first glance looks young, 19, 21 at the most. We got along and nothing was too bad nor alarming, like conversations about anime and such. I remember things started to change slightly when he was talking about a video game character, and none of our coworkers knew who it was. When I saw the green hat character, I said, "Oh, that's Link. How cute. I used to watch my brother play Legend of Zelda: Four Swords." He looked at me and said, "Marry me." I laughed it off and continued on with my day. For the rest of my shift, he would hover over me asking me personal questions like my age, my favorite things, and etc. Being the open, friendly person I was, I answered happily. I told him how I loved butterflies and that I was 16. I'm 17 now and have had several jobs since then. When an older man asks you for your age as a minor, it's never a nice sign. Moving on to December, I've been at this chain for a month now. My manager asked me if I wanted to come to their company Secret Santa party, and I agreed. When the day came, I arrived with my now ex-best friend. Frank arrives on the phone, acting busy and such, but I thought nothing of it. During the whole party, he was on the phone. I was getting food when he tapped my shoulder, still on the phone, and handed me a beautifully butterfly necklace. I didn't know what to say, besides thanking him, thinking he was my Secret Santa. And then later, my other coworker comes up to me, handing me a gift card to Starbucks and a plush. I asked why, and she said that she was my Secret Santa. I thought that it must have been a mistake and went on with my night listening to my old best friend tell me how I should date Frank, which in my mind was never on the table. January rolls around and it was Frank's birthday. We were just working until I heard one of my girl coworkers, who was into him at the time, wish him a happy birthday. Being that person, I wish him happy birthday while my other coworker asks how old he's turning. He said 27. Might I add that every shift I worked with him, he would take several photos of me before and after my shift, commenting about my hair, my skin, and my eyes. He often said how cute my nose was. Again, not wanting to cause a scene. I just laugh everything off. That's always the case, isn't it? We don't want to cause a scene. I did start telling him to please stop, but of course, he wouldn't, no matter how many times I asked him to. Now, I'm going to skip to May, my birthday month, and of course, I was working on my birthday. I went to the back door as usual. Due to everything going on, I had to ring a doorbell and wait for someone to open the door. Out of nowhere, Frank pops out of the bushes handing me all kinds of gifts. Today was his day off too, so I was confused. I remember thinking, how the hell did he know my birthday? I never talked to him about it since I don't like celebrating it. He followed me around for a few minutes before awkwardly leaving when I apologized that I wanted to get to work and not get yelled at. In July was when I finally found a new job. I quit due to sexual harassment that I had to endure for the 9 months I worked there from my shift lead. That's a whole other story, but when a man starts getting handsy, don't laugh it off and shut that down. It got really bad when that ex-best friend that I had mentioned earlier started showing all my coworkers, including Frank, and that shift lead, explicit photos of me that she stole off my phone without me knowing. I was very insecure at the time and was in an abusive relationship, so I would give anything this boy had asked of me. Anyways, at that point, I had about had it. After being interrogated about that shift lead, I put in my 2 weeks. On my last week, everyone was talking about how that shift lead got laid off for sexual harassment. Frank and I were doing dishes and the topic came up. I awkwardly told him about it, now knowing how everyone knew my story. The shift lead would often grab my butt, rub my thigh, talk about my boobs about, only if they were bigger, things he would do to my body, etc. I would say stop politely, but he would continue. When I started yelling and saying stop more assertively, he would often make me do humiliating tasks like cleaning the greasy floors with my hands and knees, or cleaning the dining room when it was closed due to the virus. And when I told Frank this, he shrugged it off and said that there was no reason for him to be fired. I remember being absolutely shocked, retorting, "I'm just glad that I'm leaving this hellhole," and I left it at that. A month into my new job as a hostess, everything was going well. It's a restaurant, but everyone just comes there to drink, so it's more of a bar. On one of my 2 a.m. shifts, Frank stops by on his bike. I tried to be friendly, but I was getting frustrated when he kept cutting me off from talking to other people. I then walked away to bus tables because no one else would do it, and he couldn't follow me into the restaurant. There was only outdoor seating, of course. After bussing all the tables, I come up to the counter to see my coworkers giggling. "What's happening?" I asked. The other hostess smiled. "That's so cute how your boyfriend takes photos of you while you're working. That's so cute how obsessive he is over you. He wouldn't stop talking about you to us." Boyfriend. I was and still happily remained single after all that bullcrap of a relationship. The only person that they could be referring to was Frank. And then it dawned on me. How the hell did he know where I was working and my shift schedule? I didn't tell anyone besides my parents and my brother. A week goes by and Frank comes back. I may have gotten a little overdramatic, but I didn't know what else to do. I told the other host at the counter to tell him I'm not working today, and I dashed inside. I told my manager that this man, Frank, keeps taking photos of me as I'm working, and it's making me uncomfortable. My manager told me to stay in the back room while he went and handled the situation. Our restaurant is very popular in the area, so it's very crowded in the front. Frank with his bike would block customers, and that's what my manager was telling him. My idiotic ass was popping my head up a little under that back room window where I could see what was going on in front. I freak out a little when I see Frank get aggressive with my manager. He begins thrashing when my manager tries to lead him out of the front. Suddenly, Frank throws his bike and tries heading into the building. A few male waiters see what's happening and were informed by my manager. I remember one waiter standing in the background with me watching the door, as another was practically fighting with Frank. I could only hear yelling outside the door and then it went quiet. I spent the rest of the shift like that, cleaning silverware with that male server. From then on, people would walk me to my car even if it was in broad daylight. From August to November, he would be on his bike passing by the restaurant from a distance. He would just be watching and taking photos for 10 to 20 minutes before leaving. Now, the reason I thought of putting this here was it's been a little more intense besides just the looking from a distance. Due to the virus, I'm not needed anymore because now my restaurant is takeout only. I've been working seasonal jobs while working at the restaurant, but now I'm not working, waiting to get my schedule. Because I was bored this day, I drove to my local mall just to do some Christmas shopping. While driving, I look in the rearview mirror to see a recognizable face. It was Frank. I practically choke on spit seeing his face in my mirror. I try not to get the best of myself and knock it off as a coincidence. It wasn't. He followed me throughout the mall and then later followed me as I was driving home. No one knows where I live besides that old friend, and I would like to keep it at that. So I drove for an hour, getting lost and taking every random turn I could until I lost him. I now believe this is how he would track me down. My car isn't common, but it doesn't stand out too much. I've rarely left my house since. It's January 2021, and ever since the start of this new year, I've been getting phone calls going like, "Hello?" Somebody breathing into the phone like a creep. "Hello?" And the call ends. Along with that, I've gotten many random messages about asking about gifts and delivering me a gift. I'm not one who usually uses social media, but these messages were all over mine. All of them were from newly made accounts across Snapchat and Instagram. On one occasion, an account started sending me photos that I never sent to anyone. These photos were photos of my cat and that I had saved in my Snapchat account. Just photo after photo of things I've never sent, and ending with, "I have a gift for you." I deleted both apps along with deleting almost everything off my phone. A week ago, I downloaded Snapchat again due to some dumb assignments my teacher wanted us to do with that crap social media app. One of my old coworkers sent me a message and I opened it. "Frank wants to give you your Christmas gift. You want to stop by?" Maybe I'm just overreacting, or maybe those accounts were Frank. I just want to say that my personality has changed because of all of this. I'm very protective now. I rarely talk to anyone, not as friendly as I was then. It's only been a little over a year yet I feel like I've aged more than 10. I just want to say, Frank, I don't want your Christmas gift. When I was 8 or 9 years old, my stepmom's family had invited us to a party. This place was a community hall, and in front of the building was a big car park, and to the right of the building was a big playing field with a play park. Being 9 years old, I didn't want to sit inside, so I bought my Heelys. You know, the ones with wheels on the bottom of the shoes, so I could scoot around the car park. I was in the car park and this car was parked up near where I was playing. My dad came out to shout at me to come in, to sing happy birthday, and then I went straight back outside. Amy, not my real name, come in to sing happy birthday. I loved being outside. It was my favorite place, plus I wanted a Heely. Anyway, I'm playing outside when all of a sudden, I start hearing, "Amy, Amy, Amy, come here. Amy, come here," in an almost whisper. The guy from the car that was parked up earlier was stood in front of his car on an embankment, and it was him calling my name. I ran inside to tell my dad. I was petrified. I hid behind my auntie's chair and stayed there. My dad went marching out. My partner now is 6'5", and he will not get on the wrong side of my dad, just to give you a little bit of reference. All I know after that is this guy tried to threaten to beat up my dad, and my dad was having none of it. The guy who had been calling my name said that he was actually calling his dog. I don't know many people with a dog named Amy, and I had also not seen a dog with him. I am unsure whether this guy was telling the truth or not, but still, little 9-year-old me was petrified. I didn't go back outside after that. As I said, I'm unsure of his intentions, but I do not want to be that freaked out again. I've read so many stories here, so I decided to submit my own. About 6 years ago, I was with my friend Tom at my parents' cabin. We decided to head off to a casino located on an Ojibwe reserve about 40 minutes away. The entire stretch of highway between is heavily forested and has no lights, meaning it can get incredibly dark. We got there and played some poker, tried a few table games and grabbed some dinner with our winnings. A pretty successful night overall for the both of us. We ended up leaving the casino at around 1 a.m. A little later than I would have liked, given the lack of any streetlights. We drive for about 20 minutes on the highway without passing any other vehicles, when I notice 2 green orbs just off the highway before a hill. Realizing it was a deer, I slammed on the brakes and waited. Several deer crossed and we resumed driving. The car was going slowly up the hill because it was a starting stop. As soon as we make it over the crest of the hill, Tom screamed, "Holy crap!" Right in front of us was a young woman walking in the middle of our lane towards us, no more than maybe 30 feet away. I slam on the brakes again and come within 10 feet of her. Thankfully, slowing down earlier and climbing the hill meant that we weren't going fast. But what was going through my mind wasn't the fact that I nearly ran over someone. It was that this young woman with pitch black hair was wearing a white nightgown, with no shoes, and was still walking towards us with a blank expression on his face. Not going to lie, that image frightened me, because it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Tom and I waited to see if she was going to pull up to our window and maybe ask for help or something. She made it to the front of my car and went around the driver's side. She didn't stop, but she raised her hand and dragged it across the side of my car, while continuing her walk. At this point, Tom and I were both freaked out. I asked Tom what to do. He said that we should just get out of here. For whatever reason, I just didn't feel right about leaving, and not asking if she was alright. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that she was still walking. Having almost hit her and knowing that something just wasn't right, I decided to do something. I told Tom that I was going to ask if she was alright. Tom pleaded that we just go and get out of here. I put on some bravado and told him not to worry and that I would be right back. I put on my blinkers and I stepped out of my car. I left my door open to provide some light and I walked around to the trunk of my car. My interior lights didn't do much blinking, but it allowed me to see an outline of her slightly down the hill. Only able to see her every other second, I yelled, "Are you alright?" She finally stopped walking, but still faced the other way. There was no response. I heard Tom's door open as he was getting out to join me. Suddenly, she started screaming. Tom and I ran back into my car and I just floored it. I got a lot of crap from Tom for the remainder of the ride back to my cabin. I haven't heard or seen anything like that on the highway since then, and I'm pretty thankful for it. That was the creepiest moment of my life. This took place back in 2016. I, at the time, was a 16-year-old girl at a summer camp. This summer camp took place at a college about 45 minutes away from me. I was there for filmmaking and knew everyone in the program. Yes, there were other programs such as dance, drama, and visual arts, but there was still a limited amount of people. The film camp lasted longer than all of the other ones, so by the last week, there were about 50 of us on campus, so you remember faces. There was a certain spot on campus where a lot of people would go to watch the sunset. 2 of my friends and I decided to sit out there. There were many people to begin with, so we felt comfortable. I should have mentioned this earlier, but the campus is located in the sketchier part of town, and there are gates to enter from the outside. As it got darker and darker, more and more people went back to their dorms. The 3 of us stayed out even in the dark. There were street lamps, and I had my camera and one friend had her laptop, so it wasn't pitch black. It was about 9:30 p.m. and a man walked in front of us. We waved and smiled as he walked by. The only thing is, I had never seen him before. Even a week ago, before all the other sessions left, I had never seen him before, and at most, there had been about 250 people on campus. I tell my friends that it kind of creeped me out and that I've never seen him. But the one with the laptop said it was nothing to worry about, seeing that there was campus security doing a checkup on the building near us. About 10 minutes go by and he walks in front of us again. After he leaves, the friend with a laptop and a worried voice says, "We need to go." We grab all of our belongings and are walking fast back to the dorms, and get her to explain to me what had her so worried. She said that when we walked by again, he looked over his shoulder and did a head nod into the distance, and when she looked over, she saw another man in the darkness. We laughed it off as we got close to the dorms, but all I could think to myself was, why didn't we leave when I said we should? Nobody ever listens to me, even though I have great intuition. Anyway, creepy men who seemingly were planning on mugging us. Thankfully, we didn't meet. I wasn't sure about sharing this story. It still gives me shivers every time I remember what happened. This happened in the Amazonas, in the border between Brazil and Peru. The jungle is an amazing place to live. Everyone knew each other and I had a big group of friends of different ages. The only horrible part of the Amazon is the existence of certain groups that try to control the region. I was 7 when this happened. Every kid in the village knew we had freedom to go anywhere, as long as it wasn't close to these certain groups, and that we could never leave the village at night. My parents taught me since I was very little how to hide in case something happens, and to run if I see things that get dangerous. I remember all adults of the village were celebrating something. I think it was the equivalent to Halloween. I remember my mother painting her face in a tribal way, and all the children went together to a house to stay safe and have fun. The eldest girl was in charge. She was 17, and as soon as our parents had left, she ignored us and she left with her friends. Our closest group consisted of 6 children. I was one of the youngest ones, and we all listened to the most adventurous one, Leon, who was 14. Whatever Leon said, we followed, because he was fun, always making challenges, and he knew how to take care of us. Yes, despite him being reckless, he was our friend. We loved him, and knew he would never abandon us if something happened. After playing soccer and eating, these 6 of us had become bored. Carla, one of the 6, had the idea to dress up like our parents did, with tribal makeup and dresses. We agreed, and soon, we were all dressed up like the kids who lived in the village of the deepest regions of the Amazon. I remember us playing around until Leon said to, and I quote, "Let's explore the Amazon and find a hidden treasure." We all cheered and agreed to leave. It was easy to escape, since the girl who was supposed to take care of us had left. Leon managed to find a lantern and a boat big enough for the 6 of us, and we decided to sail off. It was around midnight, but we didn't care. Just imagine 6 kids dressed up on a boat, splashing water everywhere and trying to find an imaginary treasure. No phones and no adults, just the jungle and us. It was life at its purest. Everything seemed to be perfect until we heard people calling. "Who's there?" And we saw a lighted boat approaching. Quickly, Leon dropped the lantern and instructed us to lay down on the boat's floor and stay very still. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I remember clearly how we were all with our bellies to the floor, grabbing our hands and not even daring to breathe. But it was too late. "Stop hiding, I see you," a voice said as the guy illuminated our boat. We stood up and I saw 4 men with guns. I'm not talking about small pistols pointing at us. They laughed and said, "They're a bunch of kids." Leon put himself in front and said that we were on a hurry because our parents were expecting us home. The biggest guy, who had a red bandana, laughed again and said, "Little kids shouldn't be out here alone at night. You could disappear in the jungle and no one would ever find you." At this point, I was super scared and Carla started crying. "You can go. You're just tribe, hua hua," which means baby in the language. and they left. I remember all of us hugging each other, crying and sailing as quickly as we could. Once we got home, we entered the house and closed all the doors and windows. We all slept together on the floor, but before that, we agreed not to tell this to anyone in the village, not the elders or our parents, even though no one knows what happened that night. Years later, I understood why they let us go. They thought that we were kids from the local tribe. We had no value to them. If they had known that we were dressed up and were from the village, I probably wouldn't be typing this story. First off, I am living in a very rural, small village with maybe 10 to 15 houses, but close to the highway. You can drive there within maybe 5 minutes, and also about 10 minutes away from the town. If you cross the street, it'll take you about a 10-minute walk to reach the forest. First Christmas Day in the afternoon, my partner and I decided to go for a little digestive walk, as we were really full from all the food. It was about 5 p.m. and already dark when we had left, and we had brought big and bright LED flashlights with us. I also took my camera and my flash, as I love taking pictures of nature at night. We decided to walk on a little country road towards the forest and then turn right, following a small graveled cycle track close to the forest border, which connected our village and the next, and maybe 15 to 20 minute walk between villages. In the middle part of the track, you have to walk through a small bit of forest. It's rather dark and the trees are very high and quite dense. When we entered, I saw our flashlight reflecting on something and recognized a car being parked there on the side of the road, close to the trees. This struck me as odd, as cars are not allowed to drive there, and the path is very narrow and hidden, so I was a bit cautious. My partner pointed to the light inside of the car and it seemed to be empty. I also noticed the windows were frozen, so it must have been parked there for a while. A bit in front of the car, I spotted a tree with an intriguing structure, and I asked my partner to point the flashlight towards it so I could focus better and photograph it with my flash. After I took a few images, my partner told me, there's someone standing there, behind us in the middle of the road. He's looking at us. Nobody was following us the whole way. I kept looking around and behind us occasionally, because at this time in the evening, and close to the border of the forest, there are boars sometimes. It is mating season, so they're more aggressive than usual. And indeed, there was a man standing behind us, staying out of the flashlight's reach. He wasn't saying anything, just standing there and facing us. At first, I thought he might be startled, as it may seem a bit weird if someone's just taking photos around your car. It wasn't even legal to drive on that path with a car. I decided to get up and confront him from a distance, explaining to him that I was just taking photos of that tree. He didn't react and he just stood there. I then went on to ask him if he needed some light, and he replied that it wasn't necessary. It was odd, but I was calm, sure about there being a normal explanation for his behavior. Nonetheless, my partner and I decided to GTFO and followed the path leading to the next village. It was maybe 5 to 7 minutes until we reached it. I remembered the letters on his license plate, not numbers though, unfortunately, and I googled it, and it turned out that he was from a city about 6 hours away from our village. And mind you, the country that I live in is in a very strict lockdown right now, so you are only allowed to travel even by car if you have very urgent reasons. After we had reached the first lantern in the next village, we looked back and observed the car driving a bit out of the forest, turning around and going back inside. I was able to see that he had parked there again and turned the lights off. He didn't leave the forest. We then went home on a much longer way than initially intended, as I didn't want to go back there for obvious reasons. Our flashlight battery had died on the way and my phone battery was low, so I didn't want to call the police back then. But I called them as soon as I had arrived back home and gave them all the details. A big regret that I didn't memorize the whole license plate, but it was just so surprising that I seriously didn't think about it. Also, it only occurred to me as really strange when I thought about the frozen windows and that he couldn't possibly have walked behind us, plus him having no light and not responding. He did seem to be sneaking up on us when I sat down to take the photo. I think that I was very lucky to have my partner, the camera, and the bright light with me. I don't want to imagine what could have happened if I was alone. This happened to my roommate and I 2 years ago, when we had drove into the national forest just outside of the town that we live in. We go to a small college in New England, about 3 hours from any major city. For context, this forest has quite a few urban legends surrounding it, and the local community, although they do go there often, have a lot of superstitions about how to be safe while there. I had just broken up with my partner, and my roommate could sense that I was feeling down. Finals were just around the corner, so she decided to help me get my mind off things, and suggested that we go to a nice spot that she had found last week, and just chill and de-stress. We took a couple of beers with us and drove to the secluded spot in the forest. From the moment we left the main asphalt road in the forest, I saw a couple of things that unsettled me. You could see the abandoned houses of a ghost town from the higher ground the road was on, and we saw this old rag doll hanging from a rope on a tree. It's creepy stuff, but we didn't really give it a second thought and we kept driving. We got to a clearing and parked our car behind some trees, popped open the back of our SUV and started just talking and playing music. About 10 minutes into this, 2 cars appeared from the road and parked in the clearing. My friend didn't pay them attention and instead she kept talking, but as I was facing them from where I sat, I couldn't stop seeing what they did. A guy popped out of each car, talked for a few minutes, and then I saw them take out a long object covered in a dark plastic bag from the back of one of the cars. This is when I noticed these guys had guns, and not like shotguns, which I see often in this town, but handguns. And then they started lighting the bag on fire. I told my friend to get down, and she turned around and saw them for the first time. Black smoke was rising from the bag, and between trying to keep my head down and steal glances at them, I saw them take out a second object, and I heard them shoot at it, right before they had set it on fire. I don't know how long my friend and I were lying there in silence, but it was definitely enough to let the terror sink in, and whisper to each other how much we loved each other in case this was what we thought it was. At some point I looked up, and saw that they were pointing at our car and saw them walking into the woods, maybe trying to follow our tracks or trying to look for us. All they know was that right then, I told my friend to jump into the driver's seat and make a run for it. I shut the back door in between that and the car starting up. The guys heard it and started running towards us, and then ran towards one of their cars and hopped in. We went over a hill and, driving way above what was safer dirt roads on a hillside, we lost them. We drove to a neighboring town and roamed around for a while, just to make sure that no one was following us, before we went back to our dorm. That day, we tried to make fun of the whole situation, and got really drunk before finally breaking down and crying from knowing we had seen something we were not supposed to. We were at first terrified of telling anyone, but eventually did tell officers on campus who contacted the police, but never found anything. Hey everyone, I am French, so I apologize in advance if I make any mistakes with my English. As I said, I live in France and this story happened to me this summer, just after the lockdown had ended. I was, and still am, 19 at the time. After the lockdown had ended, I went to my grandparents to spend a few weeks. I got tested before and there was no problem. My grandparents live in a small city in the north of France, and they have a dog who's quite big. When I was really young, I lived at my grandparents for a year, and at the time, the dog was only a puppy. Her name is Chippy, in French, which kinda means little devil in English, but in an affectionate way. Considering when I was living there, I played with her a lot. We were both really close, and that will have its importance later. Two of my hobbies are having long walks and running. Thus, every evening, I was going out for a long walk with the dog. There's a track that follows a path through the forest, and then there's a small hill, and on top of that, there's a big place with a lot of fields there. I run there a lot, so I have a pretty good idea of the place. The air is fresh and the view is quite beautiful. So, I was going there with the dog every day. It was also helping my grandparents to have her doing lots of exercise. The first time that we went there, nothing special happened. We had just enjoyed our walk. It's about 6 to 7 kilometers, so it was around an hour basically. The next day, when we had arrived down at the top of the hill in the field, it was probably around 10 p.m., but there was still some light outside because it was summertime. There were 3 other people walking in the field. They were younger than me, probably about 15 or 16, and I also noticed that they were smoking. So my guess was that they had used to come here so they couldn't be seen by their parents. We went past them. I greeted them and they greeted me back. Once again, nothing special there. For a whole week, I did this walk around the same time at 10 p.m. and passed by those 3 guys with nothing special happening, and it was perfectly fine to me all the way. The second week, as usual, I went for the walk with my dog Chippy and arrived at the fields. There was only one of the 3 boys, but he wasn't smoking this time though. When he saw me, I was at the entrance of the field, just after the little hill climb, so the entrance of the forest was just behind me. He did a sign with his hand to catch my attention, and asked if I had a lighter, which I actually did in my pocket. So I told him, yeah, sure. And so he walked to me, the hand in the pockets of his hoodie. When he came near, for some reason, I felt a shiver. It's crazy how sometimes your instincts know there's a problem, but you don't listen to it because nothing looks weird to you. I handed over the lighter when we had passed by, and at that moment, my dog was staring at him. And then everything happened really fast. He did a really fast movement with his hand coming from his hoodie, and I only saw something shiny. I just had a reflex of throwing myself back, so hard that I fell down, and I realized that it was a knife he was holding, and he had just tried to stab me. What saved me is my dog, God bless her. When she saw the guy trying to stab me, she jumped on him and he fell down. As I said before, it's a really big dog. I immediately got up on my feet and heard something in my back. From the entrance of the forest, I saw 2 guys wearing animal masks running to me. They were probably the 2 friends. In this moment, your brain acts for yourself. You don't think at all, and in this case, the answer he found was really simple. The other guy was still on the ground. I just watched my dog and told her, "Run." I started running and she followed me, but I heard the worst possible thing from the guy who got up as well. "Catch him. Don't let him go." At this moment, I was totally terrified. I was just running and running, and I heard them following behind me. I was thinking, how long will they follow me and who the hell are they? This was the first time I was really happy to be a runner. I was clearly better than those guys, and that totally saved me, because they chased for something that felt like an eternity to me. Fortunately, at the end of the field, there's another entrance to the forest, and this time, it descends with the road at the end. I heard the steps of the 3 guys vanishing as I arrived at the end of the forest. Though, I didn't stop running until I arrived at my grandparents' house and locked myself. I caught a big breath and gave a huge hug to my dog. I saw in her eyes that she totally understood what had happened, and I had never been so happy to have her in my life. After that, I told everything to my grandparents. We called the police, but they didn't find anyone. I don't know what these guys wanted, but the animal masks really make me think about some kind of satanic ritual. I really don't want to know anyway. I still do long walks with Chippy, the hero dog, but I now go earlier into places with a little more people. I took in a hitchhiker that turned out to be crazy. As in legit crazy. I won't ever do that anymore, and hopefully, my experience will discourage you to do too. I would like to apologize in advance for my mistakes since I am not a native speaker. I'll try my best to tell this properly. I live in a foreign country and I don't know about your country's sanitary measures against the epidemic, but at the time, we were no longer confined. It happened in September of this year. I was driving from my parents' house to a friend's apartment near our college campus. It was an hour-and-a-half drive to there. We had plans to spend the week together after not seeing each other for months. Even though the incident is not related to my friends in any way, it just hit me how dangerous it actually was when I started telling them what had happened. I remember one of them saying this must have been the worst 45-minute drive of my life. I laughed at it back then, but it hits me now how true it was. I left quite later that day around 9 p.m. because I remember the sun had already set and I was going to arrive late, which I didn't like. But I was used to the road as I had often taken it. For some context, it was an hour-and-a-half drive and I would usually stop midway in a McDonald's parking lot to smoke a cigarette before carrying on. This is important for later in the story. I saw the hitchhiker not long after I left my parents' house. I had driven for 10 to 15 minutes or so when I saw him at the exit of a roundabout. It was a tall, slender guy with one of those tidy shoulder bags guys wear across their chest. I thought it was a guy in his 20s that had just been dropped off by his friends on his way back from a party or something, which was stupid because it was still too early for a party to end. That's the first thought that I had, and I immediately felt sympathy and I stopped. I opened up the passenger window and asked where he was going. I realized right away that he was way older than I had thought, at least in his 30s. He had a really pale face and the way he looked at me, honestly, it freaked me out. The guy was going in my direction to the town where I would stop midway to take a break. I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest. I just responded automatically that it was on my way and that he could open the door and get in. And the next 45 minutes of my life were the worst. I don't mean to be dramatic, but it really was hell. I knew right away that I had made a mistake as I drove off because as soon as I had started driving, he grabbed his stomach tight, crouched himself in the passenger seat, doing a back and forth saying that he wasn't feeling good. I offered to open the windows for some fresh air. He said that he just had to take his meds, which he didn't. Saying that I felt uncomfortable is an understatement. I remember thinking that I had screwed up, and that whatever happened, I should not stop under any circumstances. The first thing I did was ask him if he would be okay if I dropped him off at that city's McDonald's. It had a lit parking lot, and there were always people there until midnight. Also, after I would drop him off, I could leave immediately onto a fast road. I think he agreed, but either way, it didn't matter because I wasn't planning on stopping elsewhere. I was already freaked out, though I pretended to focus on the road and I tried to appear as calm as I could. And he kept talking during the whole time. I don't remember in what order it happened exactly. but I do remember him asking if he could look at my nails, and I said no because I was driving. He apologized and said that I shouldn't worry because he had never taken advantage of anyone before. He told me that his girlfriend was mad at him, wanted to break up with him if he didn't come back. Asked where I was going, what I was planning to do tonight, if I was planning to have a long, steaming bath, if I had a boyfriend, how we liked to do it. I said that was private and that I didn't want to answer. He nodded, said that he used to be young too until he got arrested. This is not a typo. Young until arrested were his words. He insisted twice that we were followed by cars. Asked me if I smoked weed. I said no. He offered me a cigarette and I said that was nice, but he didn't have to. He left the cigarette on the board. He took out his phone at one point and wanted to show a picture of himself and a picture of his mom. I took a quick glance and his phone was broken. Like it had multiple straight black lines of broken pixels, and it was reddish on the left and yellowish on the right, which made the picture really creepy. He got mad at that point because I was just taking a quick glance, and he started talking louder, saying that I didn't care about what he was saying. I straight up said, "I am listening, I can't watch because I'm driving." He calmed down immediately, said okay and that he was sorry, and he wanted to show me another picture. He asked if it was my car. I said it was my parents'. Somehow, I didn't want him to think that I was rich or had any kind of money. I'm just a poor, old, in-debt student. Leave me alone. I lied saying that I'd hit a deer last week, which is a lie. My mom had, but that memory came in handy. And I was trying to focus and pay attention because I didn't want to ruin my parents' car. I had hoped he would shut up, but he didn't. At some point, he was just straight up staring at me, and he muttered, "Poor thing." He then straightened up and pointed to a road sign in panic, saying, "I'm at the road sign. Poor road sign." Honestly, I think at that point I was thinking if he ever tried anything, I would crash this car and both of us into a tree, because if I couldn't make it out, neither of us would. I'm ashamed to say this, but I didn't want him to get out of this so easily. He screamed that his name was Archangel Michael. He asked my name and I gave him a fake one. He crouched again, cradling his stomach, with panic going back and forth, saying that I shouldn't know his name. I just said okay, to be honest. That was the only thing I would say in the end. When we came into the city where he had to stop, he asked if I could take him to the train station. It was almost 10 p.m. and I knew there were no trains, no lights, and surely no other cars or human presence. I told him that we had said he would stop at McDonald's. He nodded. "Oh, yes, yes." He said that I was nice. He put a coin on the board next to the cigarette. I stopped in the parking lot, and I did not park. I just stopped right there in the middle of the way, where I felt like I was most visible. He just left saying, "See you later," and I drove away very fast. I never saw or heard of him again. So, I guess I found out why people don't pick up hitchhikers now. As I was driving from Texas to California, around an hour after I'd started my drive, I saw this guy with his dog on Route 66 in the middle of nowhere, at least 3 miles from even the nearest gas station. It was cold and I wasn't in a rush, so I decided to ask him if he wanted to ride. It turns out he was trying to go to a city in Arizona that was only 20 miles off my route, so I offered to let him join in my trip. He was chill, he seemed normal and looked like he cared for his dog. His original story was that he started walking in Mississippi after some BS reason. He lost his job and everything went down the drain, so he hitchhiked to Texas, where he got stuck for 3 months, and was trying to get to his mom so that she could help him out. I bought him some food after asking if he ate, which he said that he hadn't. Okay, them good deed endorphins are hitting just right, and I feel like I'm doing a good thing. After around 200 miles, he tells me that he had just called his mom while I was refilling my gas tank, and apparently she had went to Los Angeles for vacation, so he would just ride with me until I got to California. Okay, kind of weird and sporadic, but I didn't pay it too much mind. We chatted and again, he seemed pretty normal. Until we got to Arizona. He started bringing up politics and got a little bit crazy with him. Okay, red flag. But I just asked him to drop it as I don't like to talk about it. He then asked me if I could just drop him off at his 2 girlfriends at his house, which he got after his mom had passed, and he had inherited in a town in Arizona. He said that he had called beforehand and they were expecting him, after 3 months away. Also, he mentions almost like nothing during an earlier conversation that he has mild schizophrenia. I started putting it all together. Oh crap, I don't think he even has a coherent goal of what he's doing. So, when we get to Arizona finally and we're on the last 10 miles to his now 1 girlfriend which he claims he loves, I start to wonder, am I about to drop a mentally ill man off 2 states away, in the middle of nowhere, where it's about to get freezing temperatures tonight? Oh, and the plot twist, he apparently didn't even have a cell phone. As we got to his girlfriend's house, I told him, hey, do you want me to wait here just in case she isn't home? Thinking that I could at least talk him to letting me drop him off at a nearby homeless shelter or something. And exactly what I thought had happened. I guess I just got the wrong info, and she doesn't live there. My other family members live there though. Yeah, let's just go to California to see my mom. As he sat down in the car, which I had been driving with him for over 9 hours, I told him that maybe he wasn't in the best mental state at the moment, and his mental illness could be playing tricks on him. He flipped his crap out of nowhere, and said that if I brought up his schizophrenia again, he would attack me. He wasn't threatening at all, so I simply said, bro, I don't feel comfortable driving you to California, but I don't want to leave you and your dog in a place that is about to be freezing cold. Do you at least want me to drop you off at a homeless shelter? He then responded, screw you man, I'll walk to Cali myself. We were currently in a mountain town of Arizona, where it's about to be freezing cold and he has no money, food or water, with at least 10 miles down a pretty uninhabited road, and I'm pretty sure that he didn't have family that lived in the house that he went to. And he just left with his dog and I sat there dumbfounded. And then I left as there was nothing more I could have done at this point. I don't know where you are, dude, but I hope you're safe, and you need to get some help for you and your dog's sake. I'm not the best storyteller, so bear with me. Also, posting this from my phone, so apologies for the formatting. This took place last weekend, and the more I think about it, the more creeped out I feel. My dad had told me to get gas from down the road for his old beat-up car, for an exact amount and to get the receipt that he needed it quick because he was on a timer. He had rented a truck and needed to unload it quickly and return it. I didn't have time to change out of my weekend uniform of the rattiest t-shirt and joggers combo. Now, the gas station in question was just a few blocks down the road, but fell into the sketchy part of the neighborhood, but it was also the closest and cheapest. When I pull into the station, it's fairly busy with most pumps occupied. Since I was driving an old car that had a hard time maneuvering, I pulled into the pumps furthest away from everyone, so I minimized the chances of hitting anyone. It took me a while to get the car into position. I had parked too far the first time. By the time I get out, another car had pulled into the pump behind me in the next row. I don't know much about cars, but this was a big black Jeep, an expensive type from a cursory glance. As I walked around my car to the pump, the driver gets out and sorts of looks around when he sees me, and gives me a big smile and wave, which I return with a polite nod and smile, which was really more of a reflex than an actual greeting. I don't really pay too much attention as I start fiddling with the pump, but he's still in my field of vision, as he's just sort of staring at me, looking like he wants to approach. Around this time, I start to feel uneasy. It has also occurred to me that I was far away from the other patrons, and more or less blocked from view by the pumps. The feeling of unease sort of grew, But I don't know why, but I wanted to get out of there ASAP. But to pump gas, I had to turn my back to him, something I didn't want to do. I tried to open the gas tank, but since it's an old car, it seemed to be stuck, and I could see him slowly walk towards me. Luckily, another car had pulled into the pump next to me. Seeing the other car, he seemed to stop his approach and went back to his car, and I quickly started to fill mine up. But as luck would have it, the pump didn't give me a receipt. A quick glance told me the man was still there by his car, staring quite intently at me with a big smile that really creeped me out. I figured quickly I would go and ask inside for the receipt, which would also mean I would be around other people. I lock my car and I quickly walk over to the store, all the while feeling intensely on edge. Inside the store, it's pretty crowded, and as I stand in line, I tell myself that I'm being paranoid, and I've watched too many episodes of Criminal Minds. It takes about 10 minutes. I get my receipt, and when I walk out, the car is still there, but I don't see the guy. With my head down, I quickly walk to my car. As I come around, I see he's sort of slouching and leaning in between his car and the pump. As soon as he sees me, he straightens up and quickly starts walking over to me, smiling and waving. "Hey, can you spare some money for food?" I mumbled a quick, "Hey, sorry, no cash," and I got in the car, locking it as soon as I closed the door. Which turned out to be a good thing because, just as the doors had locked, he tried to yank open the passenger door. My heart is literally in my throat as he tries a few more times to open the car door, all the while smiling that creepy smile. At that moment, another car had pulled in behind and honked. God bless this person. Startled, he stepped away from my car. I didn't wait. I peeled away as quickly as I could. I work in the bad part of the city where I'm approached frequently by meth heads and drunks. The difference is, I've never gotten that kind of gut feeling before. For all I know, he really was hungry and wanted some money for food. But he also got out of a really expensive and well cared for looking car, which is also something I realized later on. I figure, at best, I overreacted, and at worst, I could have been shot or abducted. I live in Finland in a fairly small city, and this happened to me a year ago when I was 14. So, it was a Friday evening, and on every Friday, our mom let us go to the store and buy candy. So me and my 12-year-old sister left her house to go to the store, and it was already dark outside. We made our way to the closest store, which was over a mile away. While walking at some point, there's a man behind us walking the same way. But I didn't think much about it at the time. He could just be going to the same store. So I continued chatting with my sister while the man is behind us, following at a safe distance. We get to the store with no complications, and the man had followed us into the store. We take our time selecting our candy and get to the register to pay. While I was packing the candy to my backpack, I saw this man buying only a single chocolate bar. It's pretty far away to go for just a chocolate bar, I thought, and at this point, my suspicions start to rise for this guy. I go out of the store with my sister and we start making our way back. We walk for a while, then I quickly glance back and the man was still there following us. I took a look at my sister, who seemed totally unaware about the man's presence. We continue our walk, and up ahead of us was an unlit dirt road that continued for a good part of the trip. So I look at my back again, and there's the man still about 60 feet away. At this point, I was almost certain that he was following us because on our way to the store, he did not walk this part of the way behind us. The dirt road goes through a forest, and it had a curve at the start of it. Once we get to the curve, I look back and notice that the man can't see us. And so I pull my sister to the woods and we duck down behind them. My sister's saying something and I just whisper, "Stay quiet," to her as I wait for the man to come. I could see the man's shadow coming down the road, and he started looking for us from the road. He walked back and forth for a little bit. My heart was racing and I tried to be as quiet as possible. The man didn't find us but continued running forwards. We stayed in the forest for a while before getting the courage to come out. We walked the rest of the way home with no problems and we got back to our house. We ate our candy and we had a good evening, but that really did bother me for a while, and especially my sister. Thinking about this still gives me the chills, and the thought of getting caught in that situation creeps me out, and I try not to think about it. I wouldn't want to see this guy ever again.